Good afternoon, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this Community Development Committee meeting on September 13th. In the room with me is Councilman Tyrone Johnson and Councilman Cyril Jefferson, and I'm Chris Williams. We're going to change the agenda up just a touch and start with the second item and work our way down. And then, so first up will be approval request for home buyer assistance program. I turn the floor over to Nina.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nina Wilson, and I'm the Interim Director for Community Development and Housing. And what we wanted to share with you today is just some information on our homebuyer assistance programs. As we know, the market has really been a little volatile. There's been a great housing boom, but that has not been very beneficial for our affordable housing buyers. And the graph that you see there shows, the blue line shows what our annual goals have been versus how many down payment assistance loans we've actually provided. The blue line, that's the goal. The orange, of course, is the actuals. And so when the Core City Incentive Program first started, it was piloted in 2015. There was not very much activity for the program. So I picked up pretty much at 2016, where some of the terms were actually changed, which made it a forgivable loan, that type of thing. And the initial assistance was $7,500. And so once we actually sort of changed the terms, it became more attractive to buyers. And of course, we saw a lot of buyers that were, of course, over income, but that's who we wanted to attract to the core so that we could diversify the core and have more home buyers within that area. And so as you can see, in 2016, our goal was roughly around 26 loans, and we did 47. In 2017, our goal was 50. We did 52 loans that year. Then in 2018, things kind of started to shift a little bit. We actually decreased the loan amount from $7,500 to $5,000, but that was because of primarily budget cuts. That was one of the things that we had to look at, because when we project our goals, we basically say, okay, if we do $5,000, we have $100,000 in the budget, how many loans can we do? And so that's pretty much the way we project our goals. And so in 2018, we did project the 50. We did 32 loans. 2019, we projected 49. There were 22 loans made. In 2020, we projected 40. Again, did 22 loans. And then this past year in 2021, we went with, we had a $200,000 budget, so that was the 40 loans, and we have only closed 7. So we know what the pandemic has pretty much done when it comes to the housing market. And what we have also found is that, well, we know that there's no inventory. I'll say lack of inventory is the primary issue when it comes to our affordable housing buyers. Homes that probably 2 years ago would have sold for $150,000 are now selling for $250,000. And so that really places that inventory out of the affordable housing range. And so what we're also seeing too is that we do have buyers that actually do have a little bit more cash. So if they are able to find a home, they may not necessarily need our down payment assistance. And then there are some other programs that are out there. We have had several, even one of the buyers at Cedro that did not use our home buyer assistance. They were income eligible, but they didn't need our assistance just because of the layering. We get they can get funds from North Carolina Housing Finance. You now are finding a lot of lenders that offer other incentives and things like that. So they may not necessarily need our funds. But we do want to try to make our program a little bit more attractive, because we do want to help individuals when we can and when they need it. One of the things that we have also seen when it comes to make individuals or buyers making offers, the more that they can put in due diligence, the more attractive their offer is. A lot of times sellers are looking at, okay, what's that money that's going to be coming directly to me? And we have seen some of our buyers, they've put as much as, say, $4,000 in due diligence. If you know, just on the open market, you find people putting as much as $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in due diligence. But of course, our buyers just don't have that kind of cash. And we also, for those that have savings, we want them to have a safety net. We want them to have a little nest egg, because more than likely, when we look at affordable housing, they're not going to be able to afford new construction unless we're doing it. So they're going to be looking at an older home. So they're going to need that savings for repairs or anything else that might come up, any other unexpected expenses. So what we're looking at as far as some recommendations, we do want to look at increasing our maximum assistance, going back up to the $7,500, so that our buyers don't have to use as much of their own cash. One of the things we also found is that during COVID, people, unless you did a lot of shopping online, you couldn't really go out and buy a lot of things. So we do see that our buyers do have more money in savings, and plus they were able to get the government assistance and things like that, the incentives. And so we want to just maybe help them hang on to a little bit of their savings and provide them a little bit more so that they can maybe offer a little bit more in due diligence. When it comes to seller contributions, that's something that we are seeing more and more. You know, sellers, they don't necessarily have to, but some sellers do offer some assistance and something towards closing costs. Well, in our program right now, we don't have a provision at all, no maximum or anything. So what we'd like to do is to actually have a 6% maximum of the sales price, because we don't want our sellers actually contributing to the down payment. We do feel like that should be the buyer's responsibility when it comes to the down payment. But as far as assistance with closing costs, that's something that, you know, anyone could benefit from. So we certainly would not mind that. And so we are recommending a contribution of no more than 6% of the sales price. And then we're also looking at our front-end housing expense ratio, for the simple fact that because houses are more expensive, the 30% front-end ratio, sometimes it places buyers out. It just puts them out. They may not have a lot of debt, but just because the housing prices are increasing, it may put their front-end ratio just a little bit higher. So we have seen some that are coming in at 31, 32%. So what we were looking at was going with the FHA guidelines, which pretty much puts it around 33% on the front end, and we do believe that that will help some of our buyers qualify. And we don't have to make any exceptions to our existing policy. And right now, as far as maximum asset limits, for our citywide homebuyer assistance program, our maximum asset limit is $10,000. Well, as I mentioned, we do have buyers now that have a little bit more liquid cash, just because they've been able to save during the pandemic some. And so what we would like to do is increase that to $20,000. For the Core City Incentive Program, for anybody that is over 80% of the area median income, there were no asset limits. So I am recommending that we impose an asset limit, for the simple fact that we do want to diversify the core, but by the same time, I'm not sure that we truly want to unduly enrich buyers that have a lot of cash. And I will say that we have seen some buyers that have, excuse me, over 6 figures in savings. And we have provided the down payment assistance because we don't have an asset limit. And so that's why I am recommending that we do impose a $50,000 asset limitation for those buyers that are over income or over 80% of the area median. And then for the loan repayment terms, for the Core City Incentive Program, it is a deferred payment loan. As long as they stay in the home for 5 years, that $5,000 is forgiven at 20% each year. That is for the Core City Incentive Program, for those people that are over income. And even when you have income eligible buyers within the core, their loan is exactly, it has the same terms. But when you look at our low to moderate income home buyers who are buying outside of the core, we're requiring that they repay those funds. And the terms for that loan is it's deferred for 3 years, but at the beginning of that 4th year, they begin to make amortized payments. So I think for our program to be equitable across the board for all of our buyers, we want to make that program consistent with the Core City Incentive Program, that it would be a 5-year term and that it would be prorated over that, a fifth of it, over the 5-year term, that it would be forgiven. So it would become a deferred forgiven loan, just like the Core City Incentive Program.
Only outside of the core.
It would be everyone, yes, for outside the core as well as the core.
Oh, as the core too, okay.
Yeah, that's the way the core is right now. That's the way the core city incentive is now. It's forgiven after 5 years. But we are requiring that our income eligible home buyers actually repay their loan. And so just for consistency, and like I said, I think just for some equity, just for there to be equitable terms across the program, we're recommending that the citywide program terms be in line with the core city incentive program terms. So those are the changes that we are recommending, and I am certainly open to any questions. I do want to just show you the map. I know that you all are familiar with this map. As you can see, with the core city incentive program, we still have the concentration of our home buyer incentives going to the northwest corridor or northwest area of the core. Of course, the Emory Wood ball field out kind of that way, that part of the core. As you can see, we aren't doing as many citywide, but we do have quite a few in the core city. And so that's, let's see, we have 177 loans that have been completed. The pending loans, those actually are not pending. We do need to shift those. They've either closed or have been withdrawn. We would not have those loans pending over, such a long period of time, because this goes back to the beginning of the program, and then we have had several applications that were withdrawn. So that's kind of where the program stands right now. Are there any questions?
Thank you for this information. Do you have a screen where we can see all of those pieces you just recommended? Is that somewhere?
It was, it's the attachment to the agenda item. It should have been page 2 on the agenda item. Do you all have that? Was that?
Yeah, it's in the email from me.
Okay.
Okay. And every bit of this was just the first item?
I'm sorry?
All of this was under the first item?
Yes, all of this is under that
For
home
just
buyer
the first-
assistance
okay,
update,
all right.
yes.
So my mind was making the rest of it work, but then I don't know how.
And I'm not sure, I just have one copy do you need that?
I'll pull it up.
Okay, okay.
All right, when would the increase take effect?
We will want that to be effective October 1st. We're not going to go back, but what we want to do is we do know that this will have to go to council, of course, for approval, and it would be the first meeting in October, but we would like for it to be October 1st.
Okay, October 1st. All right. I'll give you you still need more time? Okay.
I think from memory, I have that the down payment assistance, the request is to go up from $500 to $7,500.
Yes.
To allow an asset increase for qualification to go from 10 to 20.
For those that are 80% and below the area median, yes.
Then those who don't meet that 80%, but because we want to diversify the core, that number where there was nothing, we're imposing it be 50K.
50, yes.
Was there another item that I missed?
Just the front-end ratio. Currently, our front-end ratio is 31%, and we do want to increase that, which just basically is the housing expense, of course, on the when you're looking at their debt-to-income ratio. So increasing that to 33%. And then just having the equitable loan terms so that we don't have two different programs, so to speak, that the program would be equitable across the board for those that are buying in the core as well as those that are buying citywide.
That one about making it the same across the city, I mean, I guess what I'm getting from that is because of inventory, it makes sense to make it where it's not just focused on the core anymore, despite, I know earlier strategies were to get more folks moving back to the core. Is my thinking there right? Like the reasoning for why we're wanting to make it not just the core anymore, but make it have parity between the two?
Kind of citywide. And that is certainly up for discussion. I will say, though, that some of the feedback that we have gotten on that is that the program does not seem fair, even though I understand that the core city program is an incentive program and we are trying to diversify the core. The feedback that we get is that it's not fair to make those folks that are low income repay a loan when those that are over 80% of the income, over 80% of the AMI, the area median income, that we actually don't have them repay their loan. So that's been the feedback. And like I said, we're certainly open to suggestions, discussion, any recommendations that you all have. I do know the reasoning behind that initially. I fully understand that. Like I said, it's just been based on some of the feedback that we get just when we talk about, just the equity of the programs.
All right, I know that I've talked to a few people who informed me that they were trying to participate in it and purchase homes in the core were getting outbidded by different entities or people when it comes to purchasing homes in the core. So they kind of face a challenge, possibly less than the ones who are outside of the core. Because some folks, basically, some groups are actually purchasing multiple houses, and when they do, they're just outbidding these people. And that's kind of slowed down.
Do you mind giving just a little bit of the background, again, the one where we don't have a provision currently, but the recommended revision is that the maximum seller contributes 6% of the sales price be used only towards closing costs? Do you mind giving some of the background on how that, I guess, is in line just with our current strategies for community development?
Again, the primary reason is that because we don't have anything. So if a seller were to contribute, say, $10,000, if they just said, I'm going to give a flat $10,000, we want the buyer to be responsible for their down payment assistance. So we really only want that seller to be able to contribute to the closing cost or any of those other, it could even be prepaids, whether it be the survey or the appraisal or anything like that. So those other costs outside of the down payment, because that's really what we are looking to assist the buyer with, and what we want the buyer to kind of have, as far as when we say skin in the game, so to speak, that it be the down payment assistance, that's what they've saved for, and that's what we can provide them some assistance with.
As opposed to the seller being able to contribute
To the down payment. And that's something you see primarily just, when we talk about just what sellers, a lot of times, even just in I'll just say the private market, sellers are not able to contribute toward down payment. They can contribute toward closing costs, but for the most part, not toward a down payment. Because a lot of times that would just be considered a gift, and a lot of conventional programs do not allow gifts.
Okay.
And can I add too, there is one thing that I apologize, I did forget to add on here. In the core, the maximum sales price is $200,000. I apologize that it is not on here. But staff discussed it, and because of the increase in housing prices, we did want to recommend a maximum sales price of $300,000 in the core. Right now, the price of the property cannot be over $200,000. And like you mentioned, for those lower priced homes, you have investors and cash buyers that are coming in and outbidding a lot of our affordable housing buyers.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Councilman Jefferson, if you have heartburn on a particular item, maybe we can set aside that one item to this.
Yeah.
You good with it? Okay. All right. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to move this towards council with a positive recommendation.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. None opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
The next item will be approval of request section 3 policy with revisions to staff to discuss policy revisions.
And I'm going to introduce you all to Candace Edwards. She's our compliance officer, and she's going to present this item to you this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so I'm going to be kind of brief because this is not a new policy. This is actually an update in policy, or to bring us in line with what HUD has already ruled. They have a final rule that was passed back in 2020. They had trainees in 2021, And now cities and municipalities are coming in line with what they have trained them on, and we're implementing those changes now. So just to give you some background on Section 3, it's been around, it's not new, it's been around since 1968, came out of the Civil Rights Act and the riots that were happening in California. People were not having economic opportunities, and they were asking for job opportunities. And so what was happening was construction was happening in those areas, and people that lived in the low-income areas weren't getting those jobs. So they were complaining. So HUD implemented some changes out of the Civil Rights Act to give opportunities for job opportunities in those low-income areas to people who actually live there.
Yeah.
So the last update was in 1994, but this particular one has 3 updates in the final rule. The first one is requiring public housing authorities and jurisdictions to track and report labor hours versus new hires. One of the requirements in previously with Section 3 is that any new hires on a project that was federally funded was to have any new opportunities that come about, those companies had to hire low-income persons. And they had to keep payroll and submit payroll, and we had to review it. So at this time, new hires is not the concern, it's new labor hours. And so those hours are tracked weekly and monthly whenever they turn in their payroll, because previously 20 hours or less temporary work, those were considered new hires, and those jobs went away when the project finished. But what they're trying to do is create more permanent positions within the company for low-income persons. The second change is removing qualified census tract from the Section 3 definition. And they changed it from Section 3 resident, which is those persons that were living in the low-income areas, to Section 3 worker, which is persons that live in the area and outside of that jurisdiction within a certain mile radius. So 3 qualifiers are: the worker's income has to be less than the income limit set by HUD for that particular metropolitan area, 80% AMI. The worker has to live in a qualified census tract, which is also determined by that metropolitan AMI. The worker is employed by a Section 3 business. The business concern is also a new definition within the Section 3 policy. Section 3 business is now defined as at least 51% of the business is owned by a low-income person. Low-income people work more than 75% of the labor hours, not just the number of persons on the payroll. And at least 25% of the business is owned by public housing residents or Section 8 residents. So those are the 3 changes. We've updated our policy. We've had a policy in place. So this is not, again, this is not a new policy. It's just updating the definitions that we have. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm open. I'll just also note that bringing our policy in line and some of the changes that we've made will also help us in meeting one of our impediments, which is to provide economic opportunities for low-income persons.
I only got one question. Just out of curiosity, who verifies the compliance when it comes to the hours? Is it your office or a federal office?
Who verifies the hours?
Like, who makes sure that they're...
One of the requirements in the policy is that you have a Section 3 person that's responsible. Before, Section 3 was always a requirement, but it's not a federally funded requirement. So it was hard for municipalities to always keep up with what's going on. So part of the new rule is to make it less cumbersome in regard to paperwork and reporting. And so we do have a Section 3 person, and it's myself. So I will be making sure that we are in line with the Section 3 policy and that we're reporting those things accurately.
Well, I'll keep my comment off the record.
That's,
Go ahead.
that's what I was actually, Councilman Johnson, I was going to ask that, who was our Section 3 person, but you answered it.
Yeah, we have a Section 3 coordinator, and also the compliance officer.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, then I'll make the motion to move this item with a positive recommendation to council.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, none disapproved, that will pass with a positive recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is item 2022-401, approval of request presumption of affordability provision. And I'll turn the floor back over to Nina.
Thank you. As you may recall, under the home program, there are what we call affordability requirements or periods of affordability. And basically, depending upon the amount of funding that is invested in a project, that determines the period of affordability. And that ranges from 5 years to 20 years. And so whenever we provide assistance, what we have to do is actually either record like a deed of trust or restrictions to actually enforce that period of affordability. So we currently have a recapture and resale policy, which means that if we provide direct subsidy and I'll just say for down payment assistance, we provide $5,000. The period of affordability is 5 years. So we would actually have a deed restriction, or the buyer would sign an agreement basically saying, I'll maintain this home as my primary residence for 5 years. If I sell, move, rent, or anything, if I do not comply, then I have to repay a portion of that assistance. And then what we do is basically recapture that investment. For those that we don't provide direct subsidy, and it may be something like development subsidy, where I'll just say Habitat, for instance, instead of there actually being a recapture, it would be resale, which basically means that they sell the home continuously, which would be in the deed restrictions as well, that it would continue to be sold to someone that is income eligible over that period of affordability. And so what we want to do, because I will say it's kind of been somewhat in practice, but we actually need to make sure that it's in our policy and that we do comply. There is an option that's called a presumption of affordability. And so basically what that means is that when you look at a neighborhood, you look at the characteristics of a neighborhood, even if you're doing revitalization, we know that there are some areas within our city that the home prices will never reach $500,000 or $600,000. That just due to the nature and the characteristics, location, and everything of that neighborhood, you can safely assume that the properties within that area will consider to be affordable. And so what HUD will allow us to do, as opposed to recording deed restrictions or any other type of legal document, we can do a housing market analysis and compare the data and demographics within that neighborhood. And if we can see that based on that data, that the trend tends to be that those properties would continue to be affordable, then we could actually use the presumption of affordability for that particular project. And I'll just give Southside as an example. That is one area that, even though we are doing some revitalization efforts, we do know that the properties may continue to be at a certain price range, just due to, again, location, characteristics, nature of the neighborhood. And so that is one area that we would be able to, when we look at taking on certain projects within that area, then we could actually use this presumption of affordability. So we would conduct a market analysis, and then what we would have to do is, of course, just update that periodically, at least annually, whenever we have ongoing projects within the neighborhood, just to make sure that all of the demographics and everything that we initially documented still continue to hold true. And so that's what we're asking, is that we just basically add this as an option to our current recapture and resale policy.
Deal. Any questions, staff, on this item? I think that's it.
I imagine this will maybe save us time and at some point, right?
Yes, and it will definitely help us when it comes to having to track, I'll say, some of those deed restrictions and things like that, because one of the things that, if we are not properly notified, it can come back to get us sometimes when we're not properly notified if a property's been sold, or if someone has actually just deeded it to a relative. those types of things. So sometimes those things, I will say, proper notification isn't given. So it certainly would help us in that respect.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion to move item 2022-401 to council with a positive recommendation. And do I have a second?
Second.
With that said, all approve?
Aye.
That will move forward. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you. I
I
appreciate it.
hope that really helps y'all, because I could imagine.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Finally, and yes, sir. Finally is item 2022-398, update of local code regarding minimum housing cases. For that, I will turn the floor over to Lori.
I was going to say good evening, good afternoon.
Good
Committee
afternoon.
members. I just wanted to get in front of you today to give you an update, kind of where we're at with housing cases, and kind of what we've done up to this point, because I anticipate that I will be in front of you less often, so I didn't want there to be any questions on, oh, why is Lori not here? So, so that you'll be aware, because I will try to, I think the number of cases that I can bring to council, or are able to bring to council, are going to be going down a little bit. And so instead of bringing 2 to 3 each month, or one meeting, one another, I will probably kind of condense them and hold them if I can until maybe every other month, and bring them at the same time. So, since 2016 to 2022, the city has demolished 150 houses. And during that same time period, the owners have demolished 120. So I was kind of surprised at that, because when you do your twosies and you do it, just you forget how fast it can add up. So that's where we've been. And as of right now, we have 233 active minimum housing cases, and of those, I have 91 of those cases being active repair or demolish cases. And of those 91, so that's 39% of our total cases is repair demolish cases. And of those 91, 50% are actively being repaired. So 46 cases, some coming along very slowly, some a little bit better, but we try to keep calling and reminding them and telling them, you need to get it done, you need to get done. So that's the 46, and then there's 37 that are being repaired, and 9 have, out of the 46, 9 have ordinances passed that are being repaired, and I'm working with the property owner. Usually a lot of times they sell it to somebody, so we're working with them. But I have 8 that are ready possibly to come to city council. Oh, sorry. I have 8 that are ready for demolition. They've already gone out. And I'm waiting, I had to wait for a new PO for asbestos inspection, so I'm doing that. So I have 12 potential cases that could come to city council right now, and then we have 25 that are in various stages of either new inspection, hearing process order, or granting them extensions to see if they're gonna make the repairs. So with the numbers going down, I think it would be unrealistic to try and just do one case once a week or twice a month when y'all have something, so I'll try to save it so y'all just won't see me all the time. So, do y'all have any questions on anything?
Well, just a couple of things. One, you can still come to the meeting if you like,
That's
if
okay.
you don't have anything going on. I would hope, because I can understand it and appreciate it, but for folks who may not understand what it looked like before 2016, I think if there was some kind of way to show that, to express it to the citizens and other members of the body who would understand that, how much was done within this short amount of time. Because that's a lot. It really is. I don't know if the percentages would show like what we saw when we visit Detroit, and they showed a period in there before I think they had like a couple of weekend blasts of the Army engineers, Army can't think of the term of the, but basically it was demo teams from the military. They kind of let them practice on some of the houses and so forth, and they mowed down tons of houses. And that was, but before then, it seemed like it was just a little trickle of stuff. But here in High Point, it's the same way.
Yeah.
You just had a whole lot of houses that stood, some of them stood so long where trees were growing up in the middle of them. And nothing was, you could move fast enough. So if there's a way that we can at least show the numbers to express the actual good work y'all done in that short amount of time.
I can't, and people, numbers tend to not mean, everybody tells me they like coming to council, they like seeing my pictures. So I'm like, so no pictures today. But, and I thought about maybe some areas trying to go and do a video. I've heard that you could pull on Google from previous years, and then maybe if we could go today. So I'm trying to work that in my mind, because I know people would just see that a little bit more, because I can say we demolished 2 houses, but where we demolished 2 houses within that neighborhood, 5 more may be built now, and other houses have been repaired. So
Right.
it's hard to show how a neighborhood appreciates what it has been done for them. But I will do my best to think of a way, and I'm open to suggestions if anybody has any.
Brian just smiling over there, so maybe he's gonna come on. I'm just kidding, man.
So I will work on that as one of the updates, and I'll continue still doing my monthly strategic update as well, of course.
Yeah, 'cause it was-
But we're still working out. When anybody think, oh, we're not doing, we are still doing. We just kind of got rid of the low hanging fruit when I first came in at 2016. Like you said, you didn't have to go far to find them. And so we've kind of gotten rid of those, worked some of the others, and now we're starting to find them. And these are the ones that kind of look okay on the outside, and you don't realize how bad they look. Or they've been sitting for a while and they look okay on the outside, and we're just starting to get to them. So we're still being proactive with everything and still doing it. But I think I'd like to think we've made enough progress that we can kind of back off a little bit of having to be here every meeting.
Understood. Something that I don't think we cover a lot of also is the actual changes in commercial properties. That was rough.
I'm sorry?
Commercial properties also. We don't hear a lot of it. We hear most about residential stuff. But I know that we've indicated a few commercial stuff, items too, and dealt with them. So, but that's what I got. Do you have any?
You can still, Councilman Johnson, you can still come to our meetings, okay?
Okay.
Please, we'll save a seat for you,
For
okay?
right down there?
Right there. But the visuals, I know for me, I'm a visual person, so I love to see the visuals where this is how it looked, this is how it is now. And so, and a lot of people do, because they do share that with me, so.
And just a general thank you to you and your team and staff in general, everything working with the, Center for Community Progress, and I know that was like extra work that you had. It was a grant, but still there was a lot of footwork that had to go in to make all that happen. So just to let y'all know, thank you, and hopefully when we do show that to the community, they can appreciate it more. I know the people in the Corps do. They trust me, they do know. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think that we are done on the agenda. You have anything, Councilman Johnson? You have anything you want?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, I guess it's only 2 of us, so I guess we just consider ourselves adjourned. Huh?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.